We were warned. Not formally. There were no signs, no fences, no official closures printed on maps. Just the kind of warning that comes from people who live somewhere long enough to know when not to explain things. Best avoid that part, the innkeeper said, pouring our drinks without looking up. Old ground, another man added from the corner. Nothing good waits there, someone else muttered. They all meant the same place. An ancient forest north of where the trails thinned out. Older than the villages, older than the roads. Locals called it different names depending on who you asked, but every version of the story ended the same way. Travelers didn't pass through it. My friend Callum and I had been backpacking through Scotland for nearly 3 weeks by then. We'd slept in rain-soaked fields, crossed half-forgotten footpaths, and learned quickly that the most interesting places were always the ones people discouraged you from visiting. So when we found the narrow break in the land, trees pressed together like a closed door, we didn't hesitate. The forest didn't feel quiet. It felt occupied. Not by the sound, but by pressure. Like the air itself had weight. Each step forward carried a faint resistance, as if we were pushing through something unseen. The ground dipped and rose in shallow, irregular waves, never quite letting our footing settle. The trees stood too close together to be natural, their branches overlapping with purpose rather than growth. Callum slowed, glancing around. "Feels like we're late," he said. "Late for what?" He shook his head. "I don't know. Just feels like something had already happened here, and we missed it." The trail faded slowly rather than disappearing outright. Stones sank into moss. Foot-worn earth softened until it could have been anything, or nothing at all. Roots surfaced in looping patterns that forced us to step carefully, like the forest was deciding where we were allowed to place our feet. About an hour in, Callum stopped again. "Did you smell that?" It was faint, but unmistakable. Damp cloth, old rot, something animal layered with something human, like a long sealed room that had been opened only briefly. We kept moving. Turning back would have meant admitting the warnings mattered. That was when we saw it. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, just a dark vertical shape where the trees were thicker. Then I thought it might be a scarecrow, or a figure carved from wood and left to decay. It stood too still to be either. A man-shaped thing lingering between the trees behind us, dressed in a suit that hung unnaturally straight despite the uneven ground. The fabric was dark, almost black, though age had leached the color from it. The sleeves drooped past the wrists. The trousers disappeared into boots that looked far older than anything a modern hiker would wear. "Did you see that?" I whispered. Callum nodded without turning fully around. "It's probably something messing with us," he said. "Mask or something." But when the figure shifted slightly, the head caught the light. Pinkish gray skin, sparse, coarse bristles, a blunt snout with flared nostrils that glistened wetly. A pig's head, set atop a man's body. It breathed slowly, deliberately, fog curling from its nostrils in steady bursts. We walked faster. Behind us, something moved. Not crashing, not stumbling, stepping. Measured, careful, like someone who knew exactly where to place their feet. Every time we risked a glance back, it was there, always the same distance away, never hurrying, never falling behind. The suit creased and shifted as it moved, fabric whispering softly against itself. At one point, Callum spun around and shouted at the thing that had been following us. The thing stopped. Slowly, its head tilted to one side. The suit stretched at the shoulders as it adjusted its stance. For a moment, it simply watched us. Then it took a single step forward. Just one. We ran. The branches tore at our packs, thorns raked our arms. The smell thickened. Damp fabric. Old metal. Something coppery beneath it all. The ground sloped downward, roots hooking at our boots as if trying to trip us. Behind us, the footsteps never changed pace. That was the worst part. No panic. No chase. Just certainty. We burst into a clearing as the light finally began to fail. The trees formed a near-perfect circle around us, their trunks carved with deep vertical gouges. Old marks, weathered smooth by time. In the center stood a low stone structure. No roof. No walls tall enough to shelter anything. Just slabs arranged in a pattern that felt intentional, but unreadable. Moss clung to every surface, but the stones themselves were worn clean in places, as if touched often. Callum backed toward them. "This was a bad idea," he said quietly. The creature stepped into the clearing. Up close. The suit was worse. The fabric was patched and mended with mismatched thread. Buttons had been replaced with bits of bone and tarnished metal. The collar was stiff with age, darkened where it met the neck. The pig's eyes were small, focused, too aware. It raised one hand. Clutched between its fingers was something pale and smooth. A human finger. Dried. Preserved. It placed the finger carefully onto the stone. Then it breathed out. Not words, just a long, wet exhale through the snout that carried whispers with it. Layered voices overlapped in no clear order. Some begged, some promised, some sounded like they were finishing sentences they'd started a long time ago. The stones beneath our feet vibrated faintly. The gouges in the trees seemed deeper, suddenly darker. Callum grabbed my arm. Now. We bolted. I don't remember the path back. Only the burning in my lungs and the way the forest seemed reluctant to let us go. Shadows clinging a little too long as we passed. The pressure eased only when we broke through the trees and stumbled onto the road beyond. Streetlights flickered in the distance, real ones. We slowed only when the footsteps stopped. When we dared to look back, the forest stood unchanged, still, watching. Except for one thing. Hanging from a low branch near the entrance was an old suit jacket. Empty. Neatly folded. We left the area the next morning without saying a word about what we'd seen. We didn't need to. The innkeeper noticed the scratches on our arms, the mud on our boots, the way neither of us would meet his eyes. He nodded once. "Lucky," he said. "Most who meet the keeper don't leave whole." I still dream about the breathing. Sometimes I wake convinced I can smell damp cloth and old rot. And sometimes, just before the dream ends, I see it standing at the edge of the trees again, wearing a new suit. One that looks a little more familiar than it should.